days. Thank you for your company as we continue our Solomon Islands Language Week 2022 celebrations. Our theme this year, share 'em good fella knowledge, pass on the right knowledge. And as we continue our celebrations of Solomon Islands Language Week, we're joined now by David Firisua, FIFA Regional Office Development Manager, to talk about the origin of the Solomon Islands Pidgin English. David took part in the online opening ceremony yesterday for Solomon Islands Language Week 2022. Hello, Keta, takia tumas, David, look at you, fella, hey?
One talk, Brian. Thank you, Tomas. It's really nice to be here.
And thank you again, takia tumas, for joining us today, David. Well, David, tell us firstly a little bit about yourself, which province in the Solomon Islands you're representing this afternoon.
Yes, so I am from Malaita province in the Solomon Islands. I've been here in New Zealand now a little over 20 years. Yeah, speak Pidgin English as well, and trying to teach the little man to be doing the same.
I'm also very, very interested. My goodness, Office Development Manager, FIFA Regional Office, my life. Can you tell us a little bit about your role, with FIFA?
Yeah, absolutely. So, so FIFA has 11 development offices globally. The one which looks after the Pacific region is based here in Auckland, and I'm part of that team. So we maintain an oversight on all of FIFA's investments in the region. And we support member associations from New Zealand to Samoa, Tonga, Tahiti with their development activities, mainly with regards to the financial aspect of the game. So plenty of work to do in the region, but we're always working for our people. So yeah, exciting times ahead.
Exciting indeed. David, in terms of the number of people or percentage of Solomon Islands population, what are we looking at that speak Solomon Islands Pidgin English currently?
Oof, that's a good question. Solomon's, I think we have around 660,000 people, and a little over half of them speak Pidgin English. So yeah, the most spoken language in the Solomons.
And in terms of the Solomon Islands community here in New Zealand, across New Zealand, I heard a figure under 1,000 currently, but what are we looking at in total, David?
Good question. The last time I did have a look on the census, there are roughly around 1,400 in New Zealand, but these, of course, included some of the seasonal workers who are here with us. But in Auckland itself, I think there's around maybe 300 people here from the Solomon Islands.
And for yourselves, a close-knit community, you gather together, for social activities and other things on a regular basis?
Oh, absolutely. And even more so recently, we have Flori Dasobe, our president, and her amazing team who continue to do a wonderful work for the community by providing a platform for all the kids and the parents and family to come together. So we do a lot together.
Now, in terms of this language, Solomon Islands Pidgin, how did it originate and when?
I can give you some information. I think one thing I will say, I'll provide a caveat. I'm not an academic in any sense of the term on the subject matter. But the language essentially developed in the sugarcane fields in Queensland, in Samoa, in Fiji, and in New Caledonia, when we had many from the region taken over during the blackbirding days to work in the sugarcane fields. And so obviously with a need to exchange ideas, to communicate, to stay in touch, they developed the language. Essentially what we have today is a single language, but I think we have 3 versions of it. So we have Bislama in Vanuatu, Tokpisin in Papua New Guinea, and then we have Solomon Island Pidgin. So yeah, it was developed overseas, it's been taken back home, and it continues to be the most spoken language in the Solomon Islands.
in terms of, when you talk about the development and evolution of Solomon Islands Pidgin English, are there any particular people, Solomon Islanders, that you would attribute to, being the main developers or the main, people that put the language together, David? Or was it just over generations that it's, evolved?
Yeah, you have mentioned something very interesting. So the Solomon Island Pidgin English has evolved quite considerably. It's very fluid out of the other, compared to the other two forms of the language. Um, Interestingly, I think the efforts or any efforts to standardize the languages come mainly through the churches and through religion and the translation of the Bible. I think this is the most and the biggest efforts to standardize the language. But outside of that, it continues to change. And I've been here a little over 20 years. When I do head back to the Solomons, I notice that it continues to change.
And when you go back home to the Solomon Islands, where do you notice the biggest changes when it comes to the language?
It's mainly in Honiara, where it's a big melting pot of all the different people of all the Solomon Islanders who come from the province. If you do head out into the province, you can kind of tell that it's perhaps remained true to the original form of the language. But in the Solomons in Honiara, you notice that it changes quite a lot.
Apart from Solomon Islands Pidgin English, David, how many other dialects or languages are there currently in the Solomon Islands?
We have between 70 to 80 languages and around 330 dialects spoken across the Solomons. So very, very diverse.
Would you say, in terms of the introduction of Solomon Islands Pidgin English, that it has been at the detriment to the other languages or other dialects, or do you find that the other languages are still as strong in dialects, especially within their own particular regions and provinces?
Oof, that's a good question. I think the answer would be a yes and a no. I think yes, mainly because when you grow up in the provincial capital or in Honiara, you tend to focus more on speaking Pidgin English, which is certainly the case for the majority of us. But on the other side, I think speaking English does the opposite. It brings people together to speak a similar language, to be able to exchange ideas. So yes, whilst perhaps in some sense it's been detrimental, I think for the large majority it's been fantastic for us as a people to have one way to converse and to exchange.
Now, Solomon Islands Pidgin English, when was it introduced as an official language, David?
Good question. I am not sure that it has been introduced as an official language. I think currently in our constitution, it's English as the official language. But in saying that, Pidgin English is lingua franca, so it's the most commonly spoken language all the way through to the Parliament House.
David, as we begin our celebrations this week on Pacific Days of Solomon Islands Language Week and celebrating the beautiful Solomon Islands community, what is the message from you to your fellow Solomon Islanders tuning, watching, and please feel free in the beautiful Pidgin English to address your fellow Solomon Islanders?
Oh, thank you so much, Brian. Yes, no, I think important to mas you must continue for imi tok lo langus imi seleva. I think I'm good that you teach him every pikinini for must continue for story lo pidgin English. Because if you may not do him, maybe by him a little bit more difficult for okata time to grow up. So again, continue to exchange in this beautiful language. It has a long history. It continues to evolve, but this is us. I heard someone from the academic world say, your language locates you to a place, and that is important for us. It gives that sense of identity. So thank you so much, Wantok Brian. Nice to meet you, Miss Story.
Thank you Mas, Office Development Manager with FIFA Regional Office, David Firisua. Really blessed today. Thank you again so much, and all the best for the rest of Solomon Islands
Number
Language
one.
Week. Okay.
Thank you, Tomas.
Thank you too much. It is 18 minutes.